The regular meeting of council is now in session.
Please be seated. We respectfully acknowledge that the County of Haliburton is located on Treaty 20 Mishi-Saugig territory and in the traditional territory of the Mishi-Saugig and Chippewa Nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We acknowledge a shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Good morning, everyone. I'd just like to acknowledge that we have a new CAO with us this morning, Gary Dyke, and I'd ask everybody to be just a little bit patient until he catches on with the way that we do things here. But welcome, Gary. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the agenda, and just to add that there's an amendment of a closed session. Councillors Carter and Fury. So if you can read the resolution.
Be it resolved that November 22nd, 2023 Haliburton Council agenda be approved as amended.
All in favor? That's carried. Is there any notice of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof?
We have one, Your Honor. Councillor Dayu on item L2, short-term rental update, as her family owns a tourism establishment which may be perceived as a conflict.
Thank you. Then could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes from November the 11th? Councillors Burton and Dayu.
Be it resolved that the minutes from the November 11th, 2023 meeting of the Haliburton County Council be adopted as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. No business arising from the previous meeting, and we have no delegations today. So we will start with corporate services. Good morning.
Good morning, Warden and Council.
We'll start with your payroll register.
We had 2 pay periods in October with net direct deposits totaling $636,517.67. October's payroll did include the retro payments for Local 4435.
Any questions on the payroll register? Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt it? Councillors Carter and McKechnie.
Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives the information that's the staff report on the payroll register of October 2023 and a further payroll register for October 2023 with net direct deposits totaling $636,517 be hereby approved.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the check register for October.
Our October check register totaled $2,058,192.65.
Were there any questions on the check register? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive it? Councillors Fury and Shell.
Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the staff report on check register for October 2023 and further that the check register for October 2023 with checks EFTs and PAPs totaling $2,058,000 be hereby approved.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally, your year-to-date actuals.
Overall, as at October 31st, 80.22% of operating expenses have been incurred and 72.73% of capital expenses. I have included within my report the details of any specific areas that are currently identifying over the 33.33%, which is where we should approximately be this time of year. If there's any questions?
Seem to be on the mark. Questions or comments? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the report? Councillors Carter and McKechnie.
Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the staff report on the year-to-date actuals as of October 31st, 2023, and further that the year-to-date actuals as of October 31st, 2023 are hereby approved.
All in favor? That's carried. Anything on procurement or human resources? I'm assuming no. Okay, thanks. So next is IT. Morning, Mr. March.
Morning, Warren Danielson, members of council. So the first report for you is my standard monthly IT status report, just giving council an overview of the ongoing projects within the IT department. I don't have anything that I feel I need to bring to your attention, but always happy to answer questions.
Any questions or comments? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive this IT status report? Councilors Burton and you.
Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives for information the November 2020, November 22nd, 2023 IT status report.
All in favor? That's carried. And next is the report on the GIS mapping application.
Yes. So as mentioned in the report, IT and GIS are working on rebuilding our current GIS mapping websites as the existing technology underpinning the existing sites are hitting end of life next July. As the community and municipal web GIS sites are used daily by many of county staff and municipal staff, as well as the public, it's important that we keep these tools up to date and functioning properly. Therefore, in order to keep moving forward with these tools, they do need to be rebuilt. Our GIS technologists have done an excellent job rebuilding the websites using tools that come with our Esri standard subscription, the Experience Builder suite of tools. However, there are some key functions that are still not working or not working optimally. And we've gone as far as we can with the tools that we have. So in order to kind of get us over the finish line, we do need to avail ourselves of some consulting services through Esri. We've been quoted just over $11,000 for approximately 60 hours of work that can be used towards this project. We currently have $36,000 in reserve that has been earmarked for GIS related projects. I'm recommending that this $11,500 come from that reserve. As the quote is time and materials, we will not be charged for any hours that have not been used. Unused hours could stay in the reserve, or they could be utilized to further expand the functionality of our web GIS mapping utilities. I think that's about it. I have to kind of summarize the report. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments? Councillor Dayu.
Thank you, Mike. In your report, you've written, in order to replicate as closely as possible the functionality of the current web GIS, we require Esri, et cetera. What would be the chief differences from the user experience?
So one of the big ones is the ortho photography. So there's a limitation in how many
Excuse me.
orthophotography data sets that we can overlay with a topographic map. So on our current one, we have two sets of ortho data and the topographic map, and we're getting the third ortho set in 2024. So we can't, with the new set of tools, the way it exists now, we could only have the topographic and the most current ortho. I know building bylaw staff and other staff like to kind of bring up ortho and then compare what maybe a property looked like in 2024, 2018, 2013. We couldn't do that with the existing tool set that we have. So that's where, but we can do it if we make our we get Esri consulting services to help us build that functionality in. That makes sense. So that's one of the biggest ones. There's some other ones in terms of search, how the UI works, but that's one of the bigger ones.
Any other questions, Councillor Carter?
So is this just sort of an add-on to the existing software that, or are you building something on top of the base, or is the software changing?
We're building it from scratch because the existing software is end of life, plus
Right.
it's on premises and we don't actually have any support for it anymore. It was custom built by a gentleman who was a GIS technologist in another county. He actually left and went for work for Esri. So there's a conflict of interest for him actually being able to help us. So we're kind of stuck where, yeah, we need to kind of move off to new technology and supported technology.
So is Esri giving us a tool, or do they have a foundation upon which you build this functionality?
That one. So it's a whole suite of tools for building it. Basically, there's a standard edition and a developer edition, and we've gone as far as we can with this one, so we need to utilize that one.
Any other questions or comments? Could I then have a mover and a seconder to approve the expenditure? Counselor Carter, seconded by Counselor Fury.
Be it resolved that Haliburton County received the information, the November 22nd, 23 report on the county GIS web mapping application, and further that county council approved the purchase of the Esri consulting services for $11,500 to be funded from the GIS reserve.
All in favor? That's carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. So we have nothing under economic development and tourism. I just would comment under physician recruitment. The OBGYN doctor has started with the family health team and is starting to see patients. I believe only patients that are registered with the family health team at the present time. Hopefully that will expand over time. I don't believe we have any reports under EMS, so we'll move into other admin reports. Starting with the correspondence summary. Was there any desire to support any of the correspondence that we've received? We've heard anything on that?
Yes, Your Honor, we have just one resolution to go over the whole list, but we have 3 separate ones that we'll deal with individually.
Okay, have any of them, did anyone wish to support any of these 3 requests? Counselor Carter?
Well, I think we, maybe should at least discuss the one, the Huntsville and Lake of Bays about this floating accommodation. This is an area that's is very confused right now. The situation with the provincial government, there was some pressure put on the provincial government. Provincial government put in some rules, but then
They haven't changed the definition of a vessel.
that's it. And the whole thing about a vessel and Transport Canada has to be involved, and so people are taking any barge that you can put a 3 horsepower motor onto it and building something on top of it, and then making that a short-term rental and saying it's a vessel, and it's not and as a vessel it's allowed to. I guess.
So would you like to support this? I know that I believe that we've done it once, and I know that we did it, like Algonquin Highlands has written a subsequent letter
Right.
because they're still not following through on changing the definition.
Right, I think we should support it because it's, we haven't had many incidences of that here that I know of. But
We're hearing of some in Algonquin Highlands, and
Okay.
it is my fear that we are going to have an issue with this.
yeah, I think it's coming from the north because it's coming from Lake of Bays and all that area. So I think it's something that we should at least support. There should be some consistent rules on this.
Okay, Councillor Dayu and then Councillor Rael, sorry.
If I might recuse myself because we're now entering into short-term rental language, I
Okay.
would appreciate that extension of the declaration. Thank you.
Councillor Rael.
I was maybe, Councilor Carter was going to move it on second.
Okay, any other comments or questions on that piece of correspondence? Then we could go forward with that resolution.
Be it resolved that Haliburton County acknowledges receipt of the October 27th correspondence from the town of Huntsville in support of the resolution from the township of Lake of Bays and the township of Georgian Bay, calling on Transport Canada to address the issue of floating accommodations, and further that Haliburton County Council agrees with the request to amend the Canada Shipping Act by adding the amendments outlined in the resolution from the township of Lake of Bays, and further that staff be directed to forward a letter indicating council support.
All in favor? That's carried. Is there any support for the other 2 pieces of correspondence? Hearing none, then could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the correspondence report? Councillors Shell and Rael.
Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives the information, the corresponding listing for the period of October 31st to November 14th, 2023.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next is the update on short-term rentals. Morning, Mr. Stone.
Good morning, Madam Warden, to rest of council. This update comes to County Council after the conclusion of our presentations to the 4 municipalities. With both Scott and myself were well received, and the conversation was rather light. There was a few interesting questions that were received through those presentations, as well as correspondence through emails that we received afterwards. Of note, for example, Dysart building staff suggested a couple changes as it related to definitions within the bylaw. For example, accessory buildings and buildings, they wanted to tie closer to the original definition within the building code. So that was done. There was a really interesting observation made by a member of the public with regards to the use of municipally owned shore road allowances and STR operations. And it was very insightful. And so what happened is that we added a new prohibitive clause within the bylaw that would exclude any buildings that were located on a municipally owned a shore road allowance from the use in a short-term rental operation. So with that, we did massage a little bit of the bylaw and presented it to you in the report and highlighted the changes in green. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And a couple of good catches as a result of your municipal tour. I would ask if, I know that there have been some questions raised through correspondence about whether individual zoning bylaws might have to be changed, and I would suspect that that might be the case if and when we go forward with this. I know that the correspondence I received was particular to Dysart, but I believe that that would probably impact us all. So I would assume that changes would have to be made to zoning bylaws.
Well, so, thank you, Madam Warren, to rest of council. So it does behoove municipal staff to look at this bylaw in light of their zoning bylaws. Some of the questions about whether it's a commercial business and therefore shouldn't be allowed in a residential zone. My observation would be that houses have been bought, cottages have been bought, and historically have been rented. The issue here is really about the tenure of that rental. And so, you know, I myself have rented houses many, many times when I was much younger, and I was rental in a residential neighborhood. So I don't see the difference here with regards to the rental of a dwelling or a cottage. I know that's been some of the discussions that have been floating around recently, if that is a commercial business. And I would say that it isn't. It actually, it's the what we're trying to do here is really regulate the rental of a home very specific to the tenure of 28 days or less. So, but again, I would suggest that it is the responsibility of municipal staff to see look at their bylaws to see if they could need some changes. I did point out in the staff report the discussion about sleeping cabins, and I know it was sort of a split between the municipalities with regards to using it as part of the short-term rental operation and maybe excluding that. And that would be some of the refinements that each municipal council can look at when they enact their own bylaws.
So I'm assuming that none of the 4 municipalities approved of the idea of renting out a sleeping cabin as its own entity. So they're just talking about combined with the primary residence or not at all.
That is correct. And you'll see in the latest revision attached to the staff report that is actually explicit that you cannot rent it out on its own. It has to be in conjunction with the primary building on the property.
So we would receive and adopt the changes that you're recommending today, and it would then go back to the lower tiers for final adoption.
Certainly,
I'm wondering if there would be a recommended date for that we would all start on the same date.
well, I know with sort of in conjunction with what's happening through the planning department, procurement's looking at dealing with the RFP for the service provider, and that I included as a summary within this within the report, and I just looking there.
So we would receive the results of the RFP at our next meeting.
I would think so.
Comments or questions, Councillor Carter?
I have a real concern about this, the shoreline road allowances. There could be, we don't know how many short-term rentals we have, but there could easily be hundreds that are affected by this rule. And so we're, at the date of passing, you're going to say there's hundreds of people that have short-term rental accommodations who are now prohibited. We process, I don't know how many, eight or 10 shoreline road allowance purchases, at every meeting. Our planning department can only process, so many of them. So I have if all of a sudden 100 or 200 people are going to have prohibitions put on them, we're not going to be able to react to sell them the shoreline road allowances, even if we wanted to.
However, nor should they be having a short-term rental or a business operating on a municipally owned shore road allowance. You can
Yes.
sigh if you like, but that's my position.
I think we'll be challenged on this. I mean, we had for a long time, I guess we didn't sell the shoreline road allowances. Then we started to do that. And then we put in rules that say, well, you can't make a change or an alteration, or unless you own the shoreline road allowance. But there's plenty out there where a corner of the building is on the shoreline road allowance, and it just hasn't been purchased yet. I don't have a problem with saying that over time they have to purchase it, but we're not going to be able to respond if all of a sudden we say as of April 1st this is happening. And I think this will be challenged, and we'll get, we're going to be in front of the OLT and probably lose. Or maybe we'll win, but it will cost us a lot of money.
I think we might look to our planner to give comment on that.
Thank you, Madam Warden, to the rest of council. So this bylaw is this bylaw is passed on in the municipal act. So that going to the OLT with regards to, matters related to shore road allowances won't happen.
Why is that?
Because it's not the purchasing of a shore road allowance is not a land use planning matter. So
Sorry, I'm
Did you wish to have an additional question? A subsequent question?
I'm lost. I don't understand why would they not take we now have the short-term rental will be a municipal bylaw.
Mm-hmm.
And if we make this change, you don't think that anybody would have grounds to come after the municipality or bring it to the OLT?
So if I may, Madam Warden, to rest of council. So the way the bylaw is structured, municipalities will be the approval authority of licensing. So if you refuse a licensing, there is an appeal mechanism. That appeal mechanism will be forwarded to the county. So the county is the adjudicator in this regard.
Mr. CIO, is a comment?
Thank you, Your Honor. I think from a technical standpoint, I think that you're kind of talking about the same thing. The difference is, as Mr. Sona said, the bylaw itself, the bylaw wouldn't be subject to the OLT. There is still a mechanism for somebody who wanted to challenge the municipal bylaw through other means other than the land tribunal. And so that would be the mechanism by which. Right. And the other piece is because they're locally passed bylaws, would be done at the local level with some involved in the county. So I think that's the difference of where it would go. There's a process, as Mr. Stone pointed out, there's a process for both. It's just specifically not the OLT that would deal with it. It's a different body. Be a court system challenge.
Councillor Royale, you had a comment?
Well, I got a kind of like a weird query too, and that is, like, for instance, we're going to give people licenses based on conditional situations. The main example of that would be their ability for the purposes of maintenance, and they're going to sign an affidavit that says that they've done it all, and then at the end of the day, we're going to follow up as and when it brings itself. And so, to address what Councillor Carter was talking about, could we not put in there that the fact that you have to own the shoreline allowance, but that if you're in the process or have applied to buy it, then that would be the same thought pattern, or could it be interpreted as the same thought pattern as someone who is signing an affidavit saying, I've got a well-maintained building. Now I'm going to sign an affidavit that says I am going to be buying the shoreline preservation or the shoreline allowance. I just don't happen to have it at the moment. Obviously, that has to be worded more better than what I just said. But wouldn't that not get around it? Now there's a commitment to buy. Now, if for some reason, based on our rules of engagement, they cannot buy it, then that rental is rescinded. Would that work?
Thank you, Madam Warren, to the rest of the council. So certainly when you look at how the bylaw is drafted, it is a good faith. The sworn declarations are a good faith gesture to operators that they are swearing that their business meets all the codes and so on and so forth. So to your point, yes, each municipality could use that type of good faith approach when it comes to shore road, municipally owned shore road allowances, that the operator is sworn that they're going to proceed to purchase it, and it may take a year, it may take 2 years. And should they fail in securing their shore road allowance, you could just let the license lapse after its annual date.
Go ahead.
But that would only be for that, like, for instance, if they're doing a short-term rental with the rest of the property, that now going forward, if they were to lose, they would be able to still have a short-term rental, but not that particular sleeping accommodation would have to be excluded.
That's right.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Could I then have a mover and a seconder to receive the report and recommend the updates that have been that we've heard? Councillor Rael, seconded by Councillor Fury. Thank you.
Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives the November 22nd, 2023 planning report, PLN 67-2023, entitled the Short-Term Rentals Update for November 2023.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Mr. Stone. Next is a report on winter maintenance agreements.
Just wait for Councillor Dayo to return.
Oh, yeah, please.
Mike, can you get Councillor Dayo this? I don't know. Oh, thank you.
Morning, Sil. And thank you for taking the hot seat on this particular issue. So the I'm sorry, I sort of jumped ahead on sorry, the next issue. So your report on winter maintenance agreements.
Good morning, Warden and members of council. Yes, the first report is the winter maintenance agreements with the local municipalities. Every year we bring this report forward, and I do have one slight correction in the chart at the bottom. We made a typo with the rates for Highlands East, and they were last year's rates. We will update that with the new rates.
Do you know what that new rate is?
Yes, it's $119.43. And the winter sand is $15.27. So I believe it's an increase of roughly 2.5% from last year's.
So I understand that there are agreements with 3 of the 4 municipalities. I'm just wondering about the fact that you've added draft to the agreement with Dysart. Are there any concerns there?
No, they should have all been the actual agreements. Yeah, they were all finalized. Sorry for that.
Any comments or questions? I'm pleased to be able to see that Algonquin Highlands is offering the best rate. Sorry, I just had to say that. Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the report and approve the agreements? Councillors Fury and McKechnie.
Be it resolved that county council receives the information for the winter maintenance agreements between County Haliburton and the local area municipalities. And that county council approve the winter maintenance agreements between the county Haliburton and local area municipalities. And finally, that staff be directed to present a bylaw to county council authorizing the warden and clerk to execute such agreements.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. The next item is your rail trail status report, and for some reason or other, I have continued to get an error on that report and have not been able to read it. So, I mean, that's not your fault. Yeah, I've just tried and anyway, so if you could maybe give us a little bit of an overview on that in case we haven't seen it.
Yes. So a little bit of a background. It's a follow-up to the June 28th report in regards to projects and maintenance activities. Maintenance activities, staff continue to do the patrol as well as maintenance with debris, little washouts, things of that nature. The rail trail will be reopened to snowmobiles December 1st to April 1st. So we will be closing the one little section between County Road 1 and 21 with the gates to redirect onto the Granier portion of the trail there. So, as well as the roundtable, staff is continuing to work on the terms of reference, and hopefully the first of the year we can resume our roundtable group.
Yeah, great. And are you continuing to look at alternate sources of granular material? I know that we're still getting concerns about its suitability for cycling and.
Yes, we are. Actually, in one of the documents provided by a local group, there was a document with a study from Pennsylvania in regards to various products used on the rail trail, and they found 2 gradations, so 2 types of materials that work best. So we're going to work with some of the local contractors, suppliers, to see if we can find that material and try a trial section of that
Right.
that material. So yeah, we continue to work on that.
Okay, are there any questions on the status report? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the status report? Councillors Dayu and Carter.
Be it resolved that county council receives the information November 22, 23 rail trail status report.
All in favor? That's carried. So next is a considerable amount of information in response to the inquiry about the side-by-side program.
Yes, it's there are quite a few attachments. The attachments are information just to or just additional information to all the questions that County Council asked of staff to report. And there's quite a bit, so it was I didn't want to make too much of a long report. It's long enough as it is, so attachments were provided.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for the information that you've given us. It does help us a lot in our deliberations. So I guess I would open the floor to discussion from members of council and gain thoughts. Comments? Councillor Carter.
Well, I guess my concern is I think that this trail is intended to be a multi-use trail. And to me, I don't see how I could take my family, children, grandchildren, or dogs along a trail where there's vehicles that are traveling at 50 kilometers an hour. I mean, I just don't think that that would be responsible of me to do that. So I guess I'm a little bit perplexed as to, adding more vehicles, especially since this is a narrow trail to begin with. And adding more vehicles to this seems to then make it no longer a multi-use trail, but then just a vehicle trail. There seems to be a lot of trails that are dedicated or used by ATVs and et cetera throughout the county. And I understand that this trail is a bit of a spine that that sort of transits you from the edge of the county into the center of the county and then onto other trails. But I'm not really certain why how necessary that is, and I certainly don't see it as why one would need to be traveling at 50 kilometers an hour to do that, because then it makes it unsafe for virtually anybody else to use the trail. So that's kind of my take on it.
I do have to say that I'm glad that I'm not the only one with that take. There are a couple of comments that I'd like to make. I really and truly was impressed by the presentation that you brought to us from the City of Kawartha Lakes perspective and the partnership. I thought it was well laid out, well thought out, and definitely worth considering. But when I look at it overall, I'm in agreement that this has been one of the biggest and most contentious issues, interestingly enough, that we've had in a decade or more. And it's supposed to be a multi-purpose trail. And I do see that we're leaning far more towards motorized use than we are the idea of a multi-purpose trail. I know that there are arguments to be made on both sides of the fence with respect to the benefits to our economy from side-by-sides, from ATVs, from snow machines, but I also think that we might be failing in looking at the benefits to our economy from cycling as well. And I just see that the more motorized vehicles we put on the trail, the more challenges there will be for walkers and hikers and cyclists and that more, and the idea that the trail is there for passive use and nature as well. You know, there are, I don't want to call them the butterfly people, but there are the naturalists who enjoy, you know, the condition that the trail is in now. I'm very concerned that if we make a move at this point and even a trial, I think would just push us in that direction permanently, that we do not have the resources or the funding right now to enforce bylaws. And I understand that there's been offers of assistance for enforcement. But to me, the enforcement should be done by the county as a whole. It's our responsibility. And as to surfacing and where we stand with surfacing and how this would impact the surface of the trail, I see that there would be some considerable or additional expense there. We may even have to widen the trail. I did want to put forward that if it is council's overall feel that they want to proceed with side-by-sides, that we limit the size. But from my perspective, I would rather see us not do this at all at the present time. You know, the ATVs and side-by-sides now have access to our road system. And I think that, you know, that this is one area that I'd just like to see remain a true multi-purpose trail for all users. I would go to Councillor Fury, then Councillor Dayoud.
Well, I'm certainly in agreement that I don't think this is the time to move. The joke of this is if you look at the back of the page that was handed out, good Lord, there's 32 enforcement regulations there. Who's going to do that?
It's my concern.
Yeah, you know what? I guess I also have a concern about the lugs on ATV tires and how that complies with the materials that you're recommending or looking at. Because obviously when you stop and then you start, there's going to be, depending who drives, of course, there's going to be a rut there somewhere. And I've seen that on the trail myself. So I could put it to bed right now rather than waste more time on it, but that's me.
Councillor Dayoud.
Yeah, I concur with everything that's been said, and the only thing I would add to that is, you know, we do have a wonderful series of trails for ATVs and side-by-sides in the county and north of us, well, and everywhere in this part of Ontario. There's some beautiful trails which are used, I would say, almost exclusively by ATVs and side-by-sides, given the nature of the terrain and how the trails get used up. And I know that there are some dog walkers who use some sections. I've not seen or heard many people or anyone using them for their bicycles, but I don't have that information. Anecdotally, I haven't heard of anyone doing that. What we don't have in the county are any dedicated, maintained pathways for cyclists. We don't have one apart from the rail trail, which is multi-purpose. And I would think that given the number of kilometers we've got for ATVs and snowmobiles already, that we might preserve just this one stretch for non-motorized vehicle use, such as bicycles. I certainly know that my son learned to ride his bicycle on a similar trail up in Algonquin Park called the Rail Trail, and we would not have felt comfortable teaching him how to ride there had there been a lot of vehicular traffic on that stretch. So I concur with what's been said for that reason.
Other comments? So I'm generally hearing that we want to remain or retain the status quo. Could I have then a mover and a seconder to that effect? Councillors Carter and Dayoud. Maybe give our CAO a moment to craft if needed. Go ahead.
Be it resolved that the county council received the information contained in the November 22nd, 2023 staff report, Haliburton County Rail Trail Side-by-Side Trial Program. And further that county council would direct staff, identify that side-by-side vehicles will not be permitted on the trail system, will continue not to be permitted on the trail system.
Here, you've heard the resolution, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for the work that you've done, for the dedication you've put into this, and you know, I just want you to be assured that there's been a lot of work and thought put into this, that we haven't made this decision lightly, and you probably haven't heard the last of it either. So next is the nomination results for warden for next year. So I'd look to you to make any comment on that report.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just as information with respect to the nominations that were received, and we will deal with them through the voting process on the 12th of December. As
Okay.
per our bylaw.
Thank you. Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive that as information? Councilors Shell and Rael.
Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council receives report CLK 292023 nomination results for county warden in 2024 for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Next are reports and minutes from external boards and agencies. First up is Councillor Rael on the Fourth of Pine Ridge Health Unit comments.
Yeah, we had our meeting on November the 16th, and all the information in deep is attached. But the highlights would be, for instance, the priorities that it has right now for the fall of 2023 is keeping taps and organized on the respiratory season. And there's been an increase in hospitalizations due to respiratory stuff. It's not in the same magnitude as it was during the peak of COVID, but the majority of the people is still COVID. And there are some cases of confirmed influenza as well. They're continuing to promote staying up to date with immunizations for COVID-19, influenza, and RSV. Another issue that came up was the small drinking water system. The health unit is responsible under the Ontario Public Health Standards for waterborne to check small systems for waterborne infections. In 2024, across the HKPR jurisdiction, there'll be 600 inspections required, which is a fair number. And so that's a major issue for how they're going to be dealing with that in 2024. Another issue that came up from the city of Kawartha Lakes, and I know we talked about short-term rentals, but one of the things that they are inquiring with the health unit is, will short-term rentals be required to be under this small drinking water system? And the current law, as far as I understood and the way it was explained to us, was if you have 5 or more units, which wouldn't matter what it was, you're going to be responsible. However, Kawartha Lakes wants to make sure that they're not going to be in any trouble, so they're going to be investigating that. I don't know if we want to do that or not, but they are. Another big priority was Bill 103, which is the Smoke-Free Ontario Amendment. It's been dabbed the vaping is not for kids, and so a letter of support advocating for the public health Niagara region and Simcoe Muskoka District Health was issued and will be sent out to the province regarding supporting that. Dr. Bocking explained to us too that the 2024 budget is really having a problem. There's still outstanding issues that have to be resolved. How the changes to the Ontario Public Health Standards, which is basically what the health unit has to do, is still in controversy, so they really don't even know what the mandate could be. There's also a lack of response from the province regarding the proposed reformulating of who pays. Currently it's 75-30 or 70-30, and we've asked to have it reduced to 75-25. No response on whether that's going to happen or not. And then there's also been a request for additional funding to cover COVID, flu, and RSV immunization programs, which obviously are picking up more than they were before, as well as the potential impact of the merger with the Peterborough Public Health. And so there's been virtually no response from that. However, Dr. Bocking is hoping to be able to put a budget through for us to look at it on December the 7th. It'll be based on whatever she can get at that time, and it may have to be amended after that. We also had our first meeting of the
Are you
committee.
suggesting that we might be able to comment on that?
Oh, yes, if you can comment on any of it. I was going to finish and then
No, I mean on if they bring a budget forward, is that suggesting that we would be able to have any comment or input into that?
I don't know what the formality is for that. I would assume that it would go through the board itself, but I'm sure that that it'll be published ahead of time. And that we
I'm
have
betting that we will have absolutely no say into it at all. But anyway,
probably not.
sorry to interrupt your.
No. We probably won't, but it'll be based on the criteria that I mentioned. I don't think the health unit has a whole lot of options on what it can or can't do. It's been mandated by the province, and then the costs cannot run deficits, so it'll be spent down to us. There was also a meeting on the potential merger of the HKPR with the Peterborough Public Health. It was a committee put together of both groups. A company called Sense and Nous, Nous, was hired to determine if the merger with Peterborough Public Health is the right move for both parties. They will be looking into the governance and legal options, the financial impact, the human resources demand, the current range of programs and communication between the two, as well as the infrastructure requirements to service the whole area, because it'll be a much bigger area now. They will provide an assessment of the merger feasibility, including identifying the resources and effort required to merge both for both the one-time and the ongoing infrastructure. So much is it going to cost? They will assist both boards of health on a go, no-go decision on whether we do or do not merge. And then they will proceed, if we choose to proceed, they will put together a business case submission for requesting one-time and ongoing funding for the project. And then they will bring a draft report in mid-January of what they have recommended, and then a final report at the end of January as to what has been decided. So that's where we are.
Thank you for that in-depth report. Comments or questions, Councillor Carter?
A couple things. One, at present, the flu vaccine and the COVID vaccines have been free of charge. As I understand it, for most people, the RSV vaccine you would have to pay for. Do you know if they're going to continue down that path, or are they going to find ways to make it all available for free?
The answer to your question is no. I don't have an answer because the formulating the subsidy is from the province, and right now the province is not subsidizing the RSV. So you're looking at about $200 per shot to get one. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong on that number, but I know it's more than $1.98. That's for sure.
It is.
And to my knowledge, at this point, there has been no decision to make that a free. On the other hand, as far as I know, there's been no demand to change the others to a pay per use.
So encourage you to get it, but then pay for it yourself.
That unfortunately is the way it is.
Which is a big deterrent for a lot of people.
And well, especially at the price that it is expensive. The other thing is just to comment on the consultants. You know, it's always interesting when two groups are looking to merge and they see, let's do an in-depth analysis to make sure that we can do all that we were doing, as opposed to saying, hey, let's figure out what it is we should be doing, as one group. Is so many people want to take over all this legacy stuff that they've been doing that may not be something that public health should be doing, and there's other things that they should be doing. So it's always interesting that it almost seems to put barriers into the merger process.
May I respond?
Go ahead.
Yeah, and that conversation came up for sure. And again, there are so many unknowns at this point in time that it's very difficult to answer that question intelligently. For instance, we still don't know, based on what we're doing, what the overall mandate is going to be for health units across Ontario. And that's going to be the deciding factor. There are going to be programs that will become local. In other words, there are Indigenous programs that cover certain aspects of it that will probably not apply to other areas. And so that's all part of this negotiation between the two and using the consultant. It's been made very clear by all elected officials that we don't want to pay any more than we absolutely have to. But at the same time, we don't want to compromise to the point where we're not covering the essentials of what a health unit is supposed to be doing. So I don't have an answer for you, but hopefully by the end of January, I will.
Any other questions for Councillor Rail? Okay, next up is the report on point in time. Councillor Dayu.
Thanks. I've already spoken to these minutes, which are a little bit older now. And in fact, we've had a meeting or two since then, but I might wait to discuss those until you got the minutes before you so that we're in sync. But I would be very happy to speak to the second point, which is the letter request.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so as you'll see in your agenda package, there has been a request by point in time for a letter of support from this body to a donor requesting up to $1 million over 24 months for a really interesting model of support for folks who are struggling with substance use and addictions. It's a holistic model of support to get them feeling confident, to have mentorship and really interestingly, employment supports so that we can give them every means possible for getting into the labor market if they're not there already, and feel confident while they're there, and have a really good crack at sticking it through. It sounds like quite an interesting model. I am personally in favor of writing a letter of support for the application, and as you'll see at the bottom, all they are asking for of county in terms of a partnership role is promotion awareness and supporting service reach. There is no financial, there's no dollar amount being requested for this partnership from us.
I'm quite sure that we can do that, and that our coordinator for community safety and well-being will help with that as well. Questions or comments about the request? Councillor Carter?
I would support it also that we agree to send out a letter.
That's a mover and a seconder. Go ahead.
And just to note, although I'm sure Mr. Dyke is already aware, but the application is actually due today, so we've got a tight turnaround for the submission of the letter.
That is the tight turnaround. Okay, you have a resolution?
Yes. Be it resolved that County Council acknowledge receipt of the November 14th, 2023 correspondence from point in time. And further that County Council support this initiative and that staff be directed to forward a letter indicating council support for the submission of an application from point in time to Health Canada's substance use, addictions and program for the project.
All in favor?
Yes,
Councillor Dayu and Carter. Thank you. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next is the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, and they have not met. I would say that the chair and the vice chair of the Wardens Caucus are going to Queen's Park to talk about the 7 and 7 project and just continue to try and garner support for that project.
just may I interrupt.
by all
Your Honor.
means.
We skipped over the resolution for the acceptance of the minutes from the health unit, Time Center for Children to Use Parents, North Lakes, Haliburton Joint Social Services Council, and the Library Board.
We'll get there.
Okay.
Is there anything to report on joint social and housing services? Councillor Carter?
Sorry, we talked about it at the last meeting, I believe. These are just the minutes for that meeting. It's we there spoke of from the housing side of the same lament that we had from the presentation about the cost of housing and the development of housing, did not come to any resolutions, and actually the Wardens Caucus 7 and 7 initiative, there was a survey that was sent out from the caucus, and that was completed, and our views were put forward to that group, and then the other thing was on the area of trying to expand children's services, because we have such an odd situation here that we have something like a 4.5 year waiting list to get childcare services. So by definition, you age out before you get accepted. So now just the one thing that happened after this meeting, there was an announcement last week about a raise. The government is going to raise the salaries of these childcare workers. But what I didn't get out of it was there's a situation that exists right now that if you work for the school board, you get one rate. If you work in childcare services, you get another rate, which is considerably less. And so basically, anytime a job comes up at the school board, our childcare services loses somebody, because they can have the same job at much more money, which is ludicrous, but that's a situation that we face. So that was really the highlights of that meeting.
Interesting that the government approves increases in wages and then don't compensate the organizations who have the staff that are to get those wages.
Right.
Okay, on to library board. Councillor Shell, anything that you'd like to bring to our attention?
Just want to bring to the attention that there is a reopening of the branch for Dorset, which is, I believe, exciting for you, Warden Danielson. And also just to let the community know, in case they don't, that most of the libraries, I should say, provide PA day events for students, and at many of the branches so suggest that families would check out the Haliburton County Public Library webpage for details, as well as there are regular weekly book clubs, crafts, and story times for children who are of school age and of those who are not. Just something to do in the winter when there's nothing else to do.
Any questions for Councillor Shell on the library board? Then could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the reports? Councillors Carter and Dayu.
Thank you. My apologies, Your Honor. I
It's
jumped
kind of-
jumped ahead of myself.
It's kind of a different way
Yeah.
of doing things.
Just to ask my time, be resolved that County Council receives information regarding the minutes and reports from the Haliburton Court and Primary District Health Unit, Point in Time Center for Children, Youth and Parents, the Kilworth Lakes Haliburton Joint Social and Housing Services Committee, and the Haliburton County Public Library Board.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next is a report from the Land Division.
Thank you, Madam Warden. This month, the committee considered 6 applications. 5 of them were approved, 1 was denied. The application that was denied was a rural residential lot that was proposed too close to a lake trout lake at capacity. So I'm happy to answer any questions on the report.
Any questions on the Land Division report? Can I have a mover and a seconder to receive it? Councillors Dayu and Fury.
Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council received the planning report PLN 66/2023 entitled Land Division Activity Report from November 2023 for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Just a reminder that the land division will be meeting once again in the evening in December, but in January we'll be meeting during the day, which will save considerable amount of overtime hours. Just a good move. Next are reports from external boards and agencies. First up is CPAC, and I wonder if Councillor Burton has anything you'd like to report.
Thank you, Warden. I don't have a report. We haven't had a meeting, but I'm going to suggest to the group that that I get a hold of the station commander and try to get a meeting set up. There was some discussion about having a meeting in December, if you remember from the last meeting. And I'll certainly do that this week, and we'll see if we can't get a meeting set up for December.
Okay, any comments or questions? Members are in concurrence with trying to set up a meeting in December. Thank you, sir. As to EORN has not met since we have last met, although there is a meeting scheduled for next Tuesday. And I'll be able to give you a little bit more information after that. There is an update from EORN on the Cell Gap project. Any questions or comments about that, Councillor Carter?
Just if you're meeting, there was this recent announcement by the CRTC, which was met with some dismay by the major carriers. I think, as an example, Bell announced they were going to cut like $1 billion worth of capital investment. And so I'd be interested to know if this affects anything on what we've been trying to do here in Eastern Ontario, because it's basically the big guys don't want to be building out infrastructure that they then have to sell to small organizations at much reduced rates. So if that might have a significant impact on this project, and once again, rural Ontario suffers when somebody in Ottawa makes a decision.
I don't believe that it will have any impact on EORN's Cell Gap project. I don't know that for sure. I will ask that question at our meeting. But I do suspect it'll have an impact on the work that Bell is doing. I know there's all kinds of chatter going around about different places where fiber is going to be buried and installed in some rather interesting places, remote places, which surprises me. We'll see how that goes.
But it's not only the Cell Gap project, but it's the whole internet. The whole second part of that, which was speeding up internet. So.
Anything on, I gather there's nothing to report on poverty reduction. No meetings. Okay, then we are about to go into close. So I would ask for a mover and a seconder to go into closed and maybe have a 10-minute break before we actually start that discussion, if that's reasonable. Councillor Schell and Burton, thank you.
Be it resolved that Haliburton County Council enter into closed session for following reasons to discuss a personnel matter of identifiable individuals, including municipal local board employees.
All in favor? It's carried. Reconvene at 10:15.
Warden, if I may.
Welcome back to the open session of council. Next on the agenda is the bylaw to accept the winter maintenance agreements. Could I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Shell and Carter.
Be resolved the bylaw 4215 being bylaw to authorize the execution of agreement for winter maintenance services with the local municipalities in the county of Haliburton be considered to be read first, second, and third time finally passed and the seal of appropriation fixed.
All in favor? That's carried. Is there any notice of motion? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder for the confirming bylaw? Councillors Carter and Fury.
Be resolved that bylaw 4216 being bylaws confirmed proceedings of the November 22nd, 2023 meeting of county council be considered to be read first, second, and third time and finally passed.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally, a motion to adjourn. Councillor McKechnie. Second by Councillor Royale, excuse me.
Be it resolved that the November 22nd, 23 meeting of Haliburton County Council be adjourned.
All in favor?
10:32.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much, everyone.